I guess I'll get started. I'm Superintendent of Schools Dan McGarry. I'm going to kick off the presentation with a brief overview, and then from there I'll turn it over to our Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Manfrey, and then from there Dr. Manfrey will turn it over to our Director of Elementary Schools, Frank Salerno. I'm going to start off by trying to get through as much as we can. I know a lot of what we've heard from the public is that this is just happening now, and this is just getting pushed on us or forced on us now. And I do want to let you know that all the information we're going to review tonight is public. It's been public since 2015 when these conversations started. Not only is it public, we have recordings of the meetings, the presentations are made available, and you'll see links throughout this presentation that will provide you with a way to navigate the site to get this information. So if you can't take notes and you want to just listen to the conversation, there will be links on the presentation, and we'll make this presentation public after tonight. A brief overview. Why are we here and why are we having these conversations? Over the last, I would say, since 2015, the school district embarked on a journey to review the conditions of our elementary schools and our middle schools, based on a significant push by community members to bring two of our elementary schools back necessarily into their neighborhood. Some members of the public that are here tonight, when we had a presentation in Aronimink, have reached out and said that they were unaware that we currently lease two Catholic schools. We lease what is formerly St. Charles. We also lease a building in Glen Olden, which is 6 miles outside of some of our neighborhoods in Glen Olden, where Walter M. Sanko students go. Those students currently come from 5 different neighborhoods down in the Stonehurst, Bywood, Millbourne area. As a result, we had to go through a condition of our facilities. In order for us to begin to think about submitting work to PlanCon for reimbursement for our projects, it was required at that time to look at your facilities and your conditions and to start to think about how much improvement is needed, not only if you were to build new schools, but what you need to do to improve your schools. And I'll show you some of that information momentarily. Timeline and public presentations and discussions. Throughout this presentation, you'll see notations that refer to presentations from 2015, presentations from 2016, 2017. So this has been going on for several years. On our website, we will walk you through the beginning stages to the point where we've reviewed 32 elementary school scenarios and 40 different middle school scenarios. All of that information is publicly available. Phases of implementation, improvements to existing facilities. Another point that will come up tonight is why not put a new elementary school on 69th Street first, if that's where the need is? We'll walk you through why we will eventually put a school on 69th Street, hopefully. But 69th Street, an elementary school on 69th Street, doesn't solve our problem alone. We still have overcrowded elementary schools that will require us to redistrict students to meet our education specifications and our class sizes that we're trying to bring down and balance throughout the school district. I also want to point out that we cannot do this work overnight. I've been repeatedly contacted or emails have been sent to my office as a superintendent saying to me, you know, we hear you're borrowing $200 million at one time or $250 million or yeah, right, nice sales pitch. It's only going to be $30 over this period of time, and how is that possible at the dollar amount of the work that's being completed? And I want to emphasize here tonight with this captive audience that we can't afford to do it all at one time. As a school district, we have to bite off small amounts of our improvements over a period of time because our taxpayers cannot afford to make these improvements all at once. We have to do this over a short period of time with the least amount of impact to our taxpayers. You will see a slide in the presentation where we reviewed with RBC and our bond issuance how we're planning to spread this money out over a period of time. And you can refer to that document, and you can certainly submit questions if you need more after tonight's meeting. What are you going to do about the current facilities? I also want to let you know as we look to build a new elementary school and a new middle school and renovate and make improvements to Aronimink and expand Aronimink, we're also looking to do $5 million of improvements to our facilities, all of our facilities, each year that we're doing this work. So we're not just going to be borrowing money to build a new middle school and an elementary school. We're also in this first phase of building a new middle school, renovating and expanding Aronimink. We're also putting $5 million of improvements each year into our existing facilities, like the pool at the roof or Highland Park or windows at Beverly Hills Middle School. We're going to continue with our priority list that we've created. As the first bullet point points out, our elementary school and middle school facilities needs. Each Each report, we give a quarterly report to our board and to the public that we continue to go after high priority items in the school district to make sure that we're keeping up with facilities improvements. And I want to just pause on this for a second. As a school community, we have two things. Two areas I think that are important to point out. We have low debt as a school district, believe it or not. I know that might be met with some cynical laughter. But the school district in of itself has not really borrowed a lot of money over a period of time. Sadly, I would say, arguably, we probably should have been borrowing and paying it off and borrowing and paying it off over a period of time to make these improvements. The reality is that was not happening. So up until this past year, when we did borrow some money to make some improvements to the school district, and then put 0.5% of the tax increase into making capital improvements happen in the school district, we would have paid off our debt in the next 2 to 3 years as far as the debt that was out there in previous projects. So the school district is in a good position to borrow money because we haven't borrowed money and we don't have a lot of debt as a school district. The negative to that, however, is we can't borrow it all at one time because our taxpayers can't afford the increase in taxes to pay that debt off all at one time. So the projects that we're going to talk about tonight are a first phase of projects that will take many years to complete, maybe 10 to 15 years to complete all the work that we're looking at. It certainly can't be completed in 4, 5, 6 years. It's a multi-phase, multi-step process that the school district has in store. I first want to talk to you about this information that's made public. This information was put out in 2016. On the left-hand side here, you'll see a link to this information. This is a breakdown of what it would take to improve existing elementary schools, as well as the cost of building a new elementary school at the time this presentation took place. It's a staggering number. It's $180 million of needed improvements and a new elementary school that the school district needs. $180 million that we're trying to take on. And that does include the idea of a new elementary school. This is also public information. We've been asked repeatedly classrooms and spaces and what we're looking at doing. And I really want to pause on this and note, we've gone through several different options of class sizes. I know in Aronimink Elementary School, one of the questions that we've been asked is, so let me get this straight, Aronimink Elementary School class sizes might go up and somewhere else, is it going to go down? And the reality is we're working to work toward balancing class sizes throughout the school district. In order to do that, it's going to require us to redistrict when we put these things in place. We're not looking to increase class sizes above 27 in a classroom in certain grade spans. The problem right now in the school district is we have a lack of balance in class sizes in certain school communities. You'll hear it tonight. Highland Park is an example. Highland Park has 6 or more sections of a particular grade that has over 28 students in a class. Another elementary school has class sizes in the teens. We don't want to take away and hurt anybody. We want to balance that out and level that as much as possible within reason. So the school district had to take a process and to layer the size of the classrooms that we have, the number of classrooms that we have, how do we want to use those classrooms, special education needs, English learners needs, music, art, physical education, all the spaces that we have in the school district based on a calculation of what do we want to have on average in a classroom in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade. And I can tell you this took a long time to get approval. So we have a class size planning guideline that dictates how many classrooms we need. Just based on this conversation that happened in 2016, if we were to put half-day kindergarten in all of the home schools with no modular classrooms on the campus, we would be short 62 classrooms. Why did we do this work? We did this work to show the board and the public that we do not currently have the class capacity to meet the classroom capacity to meet what we need to bring Charles Kelly and Sanko back to the community. You'll hear tonight that the proposed new elementary school in 69th Street, that's a couple years down the line, is approximately 43 classrooms, 43 rooms. If you do simple math, the 62 and the 42, you're still short close to 20 classrooms. And that's why, as I go through the next part of this presentation, as my clicker maybe isn't going, here's one of the first iterations of the plan that we looked at, which is a school-by-school, elementary school-by-school view of where we can make improvements in the school district. Where do we have space? This is Aronimink Elementary School. If we don't expand the Aronimink Elementary School, keep that number 62 in mind, we can fit internally by kicking administration out of the building, which I think it's important that everybody knows in this part of the building right here, central office exists on the top and the bottom floor of this part of the building. We have to get out of the building if we're going to free up that space. And that's why central administration is moving out of central administration. Even if we can't get agreement to expand the building as much as we really need to expand it, we still have to increase it by at least 8 classrooms. In order to make that happen, central office has to be out of the building to make that happen. This is an example of an elementary school in the district that folks keep asking about, Biowood Elementary School. It sits on 2 acres. People keep asking at forums that we've gone to, can't you build up there? Can't you build around that? We've looked at that. It's maxed out. This building in itself, it already had an addition at one time. It can no longer take on any more classroom space on this campus. So you'll note with the architect that we were working with at the time, there wasn't even a suggestion to make additions or renovations as far as adding classrooms. Renovating the building, yes, but not increasing the capacity. This is Garriford Elementary School. Garriford Elementary School could fit, could fit 5 classrooms on the top part, an addition on the top of the building, going up on that building. As a school district administration, you'll notice the size again of Garriford Elementary School, not a large campus. If we can reduce having to put additional students on what we think are already overcrowded communities and reduce having to put additions onto other schools and maximize an addition onto one property within reason, it could save us money. And that's why we're considered expanding Aronimink that way and not putting an addition onto Garriford Elementary School. And you can't do one at Biowood Elementary School. This is Highland Park Elementary School, one of our most overcrowded elementary schools. There's no additional space at Highland Park. It's a key part of this conversation because Highland Park is one of the key elementary schools that once we bring Senko and once we bring Charles Kelly back into the school district, it becomes even more overcrowded. Once you put half-time kindergarten back at Highland Park, it's over 120 some odd students that you're putting back half-time, cut that in half, so 60 and 60. It's even more overcrowded than it already is. Students have to be redistricted away from Highland Park to make it work. And you cannot put an addition onto that school. Right here is Hillcrest Elementary School. Notice Hillcrest wouldn't get an addition. It would be taking classrooms and cutting them in half at Hillcrest Elementary School. Educationally, Hillcrest right now is between 700 and 800 kids. It fluctuates. It's already got congestion. It already has a problem with traffic that we deal with pretty regularly. So if we can reduce an additional 6 classrooms by cutting classrooms in half at Hillcrest, we'd like to do that. We'd like to avoid having to put more students on that property and spread that out to equalize what we have to do and cut down on potentially an unnecessary renovation and cutting classrooms in half, which are really nice classrooms in that building. This is Primus Elementary School. Primus Elementary School would allow us to put 8 classrooms on. It's important to note that currently Westbrook Park, Aronimink, Primus, they're not seeing a great influx of new students, nor is Aronimink. The reality is in the 69th Street area, that's where our greatest need is, and there is no ability to expand those buildings in that area. That's why we're facing the problem that we're facing. This also is a plan at Primus Elementary School that is currently operating what we would call classrooms that are not really up to the size and space that you would need because of the programming that's there. In the future, we would like to take Primus Elementary School and simply bring it up to where it would be, have an appropriate art room, appropriate autistic support, appropriate classroom space there by increasing the classrooms at one point in time. Adding 8 classrooms onto Primus is a plan to improve the ed specs there. It doesn't allow us to balance class size across the district. This is Stonehurst Hills Elementary School, similar to Biowood Elementary School. You notice that the school is pretty much, again, on 2 acres with no space. So Biowood has no space, Stonehurst has no space, Highland Park has no space. This was publicly presented to the board in 2016, and this is what led to the board understanding that they do need a new elementary school in the district somewhere in the 69th Street area. This is Westbrook Park Elementary School. Again, No plan to put an addition on Westbrook Park Elementary School. Currently, the classrooms work nicely, and there wouldn't be a need to ease overcrowding because it's not overcrowded compared to the other schools in the district. For this evening, we're going to continue to provide an overview of the facilities, the historical review. We wanted to make sure that you're aware that this isn't new. I know that some are coming new to hearing this, and we appreciate that, but this has been going on for several years in the school district. And we're finally getting to a point where administratively we're trying to take action to improve the conditions of our schools and the conditions of learning environments for our kids. Again, toward the end of the conversation tonight, if you're logging in and sending those questions to us, we'll gather them, read them out loud, and try to answer as many as we can. We'll also put them out in a frequently asked question document following the meeting this evening. Here's how you submit your questions. Again, by logging in and then hitting in that code 7583. Following this evening, I'd like to point out that all of the information that we're talking about can be found in either our board docs, which is all of our public presentations, a summary and an explanation of all these presentations going back over the last several years. We also video and record our public meetings. You can then go back and watch those public meetings for more information and discussions and questions and answers that have been going on for the last couple of years. You can also email us. It'll come to my office. Committee questions. Any questions that you have when you leave here tonight and you go back and you look at this information, feel free to send an email to this. We do this every single month, so before we have a public meeting, we send out the agenda in advance to the members of the school district community. They send us questions and answers, and sometimes people say, I'd like you to put this on an agenda for us so we can hear about it more at a public meeting. So we also have this link, which is an email that will come to us that will allow us to provide even more answers to the questions you have following tonight. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Manfrey with the middle school.
Thank you, Dr. McGarry. Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Manfrey. I've been in Upper Darby School District for 28 years. I was a member of the School Capacity Task Force that was started under Superintendent DeFligger when I was the principal of Primus Elementary School and later as the principal of Drexel Hill Middle School. I was also a member of the Educational Specifications Committee that was started under Superintendent Dunlap and has continued under Superintendent Norelli's leadership and now Dr. McGarry's leadership. So you may be asking yourself this evening, why would we start with Clifton Heights Middle School in terms of a presentation when we're talking about overcrowded conditions at the elementary level? Well, the fact is that our middle schools are overcrowded as well. And we realized through our work with the demographers that we contracted with that if we did not fix our middle school capacity issues prior to fixing the elementary school situation, we were going to run into a problem and jam ourselves up. That's why Clifton Heights is part of the Phase 1 plan that Dr. McGarry was talking about earlier this evening. So I want you to realize one of the things that we're contending with Drexel Hill Middle School and Beverly Hills Middle School is that we have over 80 classes at those two middle schools, over 80 sections that is, at Drexel Hill and Beverly Hills of 30 or more students. We are well over capacity at both of those buildings. In fact, I see some Drexel Hill Middle School teachers here this evening. Thanks for coming out. In fact, we are in such dire straits at Drexel Hill Middle School that we have 10 modular classrooms in the back of Drexel Hill Middle School that are approximately 25 years old, and they were supposed to be a stopgap when we got them. There are classrooms at Drexel Hill Middle School in the basement that have been converted from storage areas. Some of those classrooms do not have windows. So we are in desperate need, both at Drexel Hill Middle School and at Beverly Hills Middle School, to alleviate some of the overcrowded conditions that we have there. Some of the things that we talked about early on was whether or not it would be a good idea to build on to Drexel Hill Middle School. Drexel Hill Middle School has a large campus. It seems to be an area that would be able to take on an addition, and we did study that. We studied that with our Educational Specifications Committee. There is no one on the Educational Specifications Committee that believed that putting an addition on the Drexel Hill Middle School was an educationally sound idea. We would be increasing that school's population from about 1,400 students to 2,000 students on that campus. We didn't believe it was a good idea for academics, for extracurriculars, for traffic reasons. We have Hillcrest Elementary School directly behind it. We have the kindergarten center slightly up the road on State Road, Upper Darby High School on Lansdowne Avenue. And for any of you who have been on State Road during particular times of the day, you know that traffic on that street during those times of dismissal and arrival is very difficult to begin with. So to put 2,000 students on a middle school campus, and I can speak to this as a former middle school principal, is an extremely bad idea. And again, everyone on our Educational Specifications Committee agreed to that. We believed that the best thing to do was to build a new middle school in the Clifton Heights area on property that we own at Clifton Heights Field. And that's how we proceeded to move forward. In addition, we believe that our kids deserve a 21st century learning environment that includes the latest and greatest technology and resources that our students can do to progress in their academics. We're planning on doing that in the new Clifton Heights Middle School and making those necessary improvements at Beverly Hills and Drexel Hill. I want to pause on this for a second and allow you to take a look at this slide. This slide demonstrates what the proposed catchment areas would be for our 3 middle schools. In purple, here, this would be Drexel Hill Middle School's catchment area. In green would be the Beverly Hills Middle School catchment area, and in the orange, I think that's orange, would be the Clifton Heights Middle School catchment area. You'll notice that the green catchment area is the smallest catchment area. But this area of our school district is where our population is most dense and where the greatest need is for alleviating overcrowdedness. So again, Drexel Hill Middle School, Clifton Heights, Beverly Hills. I want to also point out that this is a draft catchment area, pending board approval. Some of the things I'd like to remind folks about, Dr. McGarry has mentioned tonight, and you'll hear us mention several more times, that none of this is new, that we've been presenting our facilities plan over and over again at several different venues and several different forums. We have talked about providing a plan for a new middle school in Clifton Heights, as I just reviewed with you. We reviewed plans for a possible new middle school at 69th Street, currently owned by Upper Darby Township. I know that Dr. McGarry and members of the facility team and facilities department have been meeting with the township to discuss a possibility of a land swap. We currently own Cardington Stonehurst Field, and the township owns 69th Street Athletic Facility. So we're in talks with the township about doing a land swap for that 69th Street Athletic Facility. We've done presentations about the renovations that we plan on doing to all of our buildings, our middle schools, our high school, and our elementary schools. We've demonstrated the need to ease overcrowding in the district at several different venues and several different forums. We've also demonstrated a multi-year, multi-phase plan for improving facilities and better academic and athletic facilities. If you have not had an opportunity to see our new athletic facility here at Upper Darby High School, Memorial Stadium, I would urge you to do so. So we are moving forward. New bathrooms here at Upper Darby High School. Dr. McGarry mentioned some of the other renovations that are taking place throughout the school district. And we've provided a facilities improvement plan that is fiscally, we believe, is fiscally responsible, taking the taxpayers into consideration as we move forward with our plans. Mr. Salerno?
My name is Frank Salerno. I'm the Director of Elementary Education. One thing that we did not project, but I think it's important to highlight going back to this map of the draft catchment area for the middle school once Clifton Heights is constructed, is the approximate enrollment. While the catchment areas vary in size, the approximate enrollment of Drexel Hill Middle School and Beverly Hills Middle School would go down to approximately 1,000 students, and Clifton Heights Middle School would be just a bit north of 800 students. So we would have much more balance, and this would alleviate the issues that Dr. Manfrey explained at both Drexel Hill and Beverly Hills, and meeting our capacity guidelines that we have set with our work with the architects for the new school at Clifton Heights. So going back to some of the questions that are being asked that are coming through on our website here, ask the question about, well, why not build the elementary school on 69th Street first? And Dr. McGarry mentioned this, and I think it's worth repeating. While we would like to do all of these projects at one time, we would love to be able to renovate and expand Aronimink. We would like to have already commenced some building at Clifton Heights Middle School. We would like to also build the 69th Street Elementary School. That is not fiscally responsible. We cannot overburden our taxpayers. And as many of you are aware, we are still in the process of making sure that we have appropriate clearance to go ahead and start the project at Clifton Heights. In addition to that, we do not currently, as Dr. Manfrey mentioned, own the land on 69th Street, but that is a consideration. Part of phase one of this plan, again, is the construction of a new school at Clifton Heights, a new middle school, and the renovation and expansion of Aronimink. That is a part of phase one of this plan. Phase two would be the idea of building a new elementary school in 69th Street. The bottom line is we need all of these things to happen. We need all of them to happen. They all need to happen to accomplish the objectives that you see up here. Accomplish the objectives of not having the need to lease Walter Senko at St. George and Charles Kelly at St. Charles, especially Senko being outside of the school district. The need to bring all kindergarten classes back to their neighborhood elementary schools, so have all of our elementary schools as K-5 buildings. Still maintaining a half-day program, because increasing to a full-day program would create a need for even more space than we are currently talking about. One of our goals is also to have no modular buildings used, and also to adhere to the ed specs conditions that we have set and have been board approved, our class sizes that Dr. McGarry mentioned earlier in the presentation. Also to redistrict with the least amount of impact, one-time redistricting, and not student by student, and to provide opportunities for our families and students to be able to engage in after-school activities. Some of the short-term plans to reach the long-term goals for Aronimink. So again, this is a multi-step, multi-phase plan. Right now, with the renovation and expansion of Aronimink, we are going to be able to eliminate the need for the lease at Walter Senko School in Glen Olden, as well as prepare for future new elementary boundaries. We're going to renovate Aronimink to incorporate brand new state-of-the-art educational spaces. It will be by far the newest building in the school district, second only to Highland Park, which is our youngest building in the district at 40 years old. This will also provide temporary location for the kindergarten center at Aronimink until the completion of a new elementary school in the 69th Street area. So again, we're going to have Senko as a K-5 building, as it currently exists, but maintain their kindergartners as a half-day program, move into our current kindergarten center building. We're going to have those students operate in a swing space once Aronimink is renovated and expanded, along with the current Aronimink students. Why is Senko such a priority for us? This map on the right shows you the distance that our students travel, and I just picked this is an address that a student would travel from to get a bus and travel to Walter Senko Elementary School. And that takes about 30 minutes on average, depending on weather, each way. So our students currently are getting on a bus and traveling about 6.8 miles, 6.7 miles. Takes them about an hour in total every single day on the bus. Depending on weather, obviously that time can increase. Inclement weather, that can add an extra 15 minutes to 30 minutes. But on average, our students are on the bus for an hour each day, traveling out to Glen Olden, to the school that we are leasing from St. George. By moving them, simply this first move as a swing space at the kindergarten center you can see that this distance decreases by more than half. So we're going down to 2.3 miles, and the average commute time, 2.8 miles, excuse me, and the average commute time would go down to less than 15 minutes. So total, they'd be on the bus for approximately 28 minutes to 30 minutes. Again, as a temporary situation. Additionally, Senco is important because the space that we are currently leasing in Glen Olden from St. George, we have to make use of this facility as best we can. This picture on the right shows you phys ed class happening with nothing bordering the cafeteria on the right-hand side of this. We stack some tables up here and we try to do our best. On the other side of this picture, we have lunch happening. So the phys ed teacher, and those of you that have had students maybe attend or have worked or have been in Bywood or Stonehurst, at the very least there's a curtain partition here separating the two spaces. Right now, as it exists at Charles Kelly, they have phys ed here, and for a few periods of the day, lunch is happening on the other side of this space here. In addition to this, this is a picture, not too clear, I apologize for the lack of clarity with this, but these are the front doors, the main entrance that you have to be buzzed to get into for Walter Senco. And right here you can see our instrumental music teacher and one of our Senco students rehearsing, and this is a common occurrence at Senco because we do not have the space for this sort of a program. So it's nice to be greeted by some music when you walk in. However, the main lobby of the school obviously is not the most ideal space to have instrumental music lessons happening. The adjacent classrooms to the main lobby are also impacted because of the noise and the instruction that this cuts into every single day. Much like the map that Dr. Manfrey showed you, this again is a draft. This is a draft, a proposed elementary catchment area, pending board approval, to give you a rough idea of what the boundaries may look like once Aronimink is expanded and once 69th Street Elementary School is built. Again, it's worth repeating. This is not going to happen as a part of Phase 1. Phase 1 is the renovation and expansion of Aronimink to be utilized as a swing space for the current Aronimink students and the kindergarten students. This is once the 69th Street Elementary School is built and we have expanded Aronimink, the proposed catchment areas. I also want to pause here for a second and remind you, if we haven't already, to let you know that this presentation is being filmed. We plan to post this, just as we have many of our other presentations, on our website, along with this presentation. This chart here shows you the approximate enrollment numbers with the new catchment areas from this map that I just showed. What you'll see is much more of a balance that Dr. McGarry was referring to for our elementary schools. What you will not see is Charles Kelly Elementary School and Walter Senco Elementary School on this list. This, once again, is with the construction of the new 69th Street Elementary School and our other elementary schools that we will have in the district. And we gave you a range here of approximate enrollment. Note that we're not building to capacity. We are not filling these schools to capacity. So while many of you have heard that the projected, or not projected, but the maximum enrollment of Aronimink Elementary School would be 700 students, we'd be foolish to fill that building to 700 students. So we're looking at an enrollment of approximately 570 to 590 students. If these buildings all were to happen overnight and be operational tomorrow, this is really what we would be looking at in terms of the approximate enrollment of each of these schools. Again, providing much more balance. Going back to this map very quickly, I think it's important to note, because I think one of the misconceptions is that with the construction of the new elementary school, that these lines here, these black lines represent the existing borders. Okay? So these black lines that you're seeing represent the existing borders of our elementary schools. What you'll see here is with the construction of this new elementary school, it's not just pulling students from what is now currently Charles Kelly and Walter Senco and filling that building with those two schools. The new elementary school is pulling from students that currently attend Bywood, a section that currently attends Stonehurst, Charles Kelly, and Walter Senko. So students from that whole area will benefit from this new school in the 69th Street area. That is not a school just to accommodate Charles Kelly and Walter Senko. Sure. And I'm having a hard time with my laser pointer at the moment. So no, I cannot, Dr. McGarry. Yeah, can you operate that and I can talk to it? Sure. There you go. So this area here are our current Senko students that would be attending Bywood Elementary School and not the new elementary school. This area here is Charles Kelly Elementary School. And this little, it's working now. This little sliver here, thank you for your help, Dr. McGarry. This little sliver here are students that would currently attend Stonehurst Hills but would be attending 69th Street. This area up here, we also have students that would attend Senko currently. Some of these students will attend 69th Street. Some of these students in this area here will attend Highland Park. And again, this section here currently attends Bywood Elementary School, but they would attend the new 69th Street Elementary School. Some questions have been coming through about taxes, and Dr. McGarry did already touch on this. Okay? On March 26th, we did do an overview of the Finance and Operations during the Finance and Operations Committee meeting about the projects to be financed, and if you use this link when we post the presentation, all of the financing for Phase 1 can be viewed using this link. We would put the tables, and it's just a little bit hard to read in the form of a presentation, but all of this information is public information. Again, a part of the presentation to the Aronimink Civic Association was $3,300 net increase. There was a slide that said a $3,300 net increase on an average assessed home for the entire community. And there was a question about whether or not that was $3,300 a year, or my house not being assessed at the average assessed value of homes for representing the entire community. This link here will provide some clarity around that. But again, on average, we're talking about $3,300 over the course of over 30 years total as a cost for these projects.
I just want to add to that as some questions come through. Public schools are now capped at what is called by an Act 1 timeline and a process, meaning school districts now cannot go out and tax above the index. So in order for us to take this into consideration, teacher contracts and the work that we're doing, we have to take into consideration what we're allowed to tax per the law, per that timeline. So in this school district, we would not be able to go out after this Phase 1 if the work and the projects that need to be completed moving forward, if there was a recession or anything else that hit, that would allow us to go out above the index without voter referendum. Meaning, I know this is coming in from the public, in order for us to continue to do this work, we have a couple things we have to accomplish. One, which is called a Taj Mahal hearing, an Act 34 hearing, which is really the only hearing a school district has to put on for approval before they do this kind of work. We'd have to go out and prove and show our financial or fiduciary responsibility to do this work. We would not be able to do the second phase and the third phase if it meant the work would put us over the Act 1 index moving forward. So we have to be aware of the fact that, yes, in full conversation with you tonight, the next phase of this project is going to be based around our ability to afford the next phases of this work. We cannot afford to do it all at one time. We're underfunded as a school district. I know people are tired of hearing about it, but it's true. By $16 million a year. Other school districts are getting more money with less students enrolled into their programs, and we continue to get less money for the things that we're doing per what is already in the law that we should be getting that we're not getting. So to answer your question, we can only go out and tax to a certain threshold. The school district has voted year in and year out to go below the index every single year to do this work.
There have also been some questions about transportation and the thought that we are putting a bus loop at Aronimink simply to accommodate the Aronimink, Wallets, Aronimink, and the K Center, which you can see from this slide simply isn't true. Okay, so you can see our current bus numbers here for Aronimink as it currently exists. The middle section here shows the bus numbers total, and again, because we will have kindergarten here, a midday pickup and drop off as well, and you can see the total given the approximate enrollment that we were looking at for students in the morning, midday, because Aronimink will be a K-5 building, and for the PM pickup. At this point, we are going to hand the presentation over to our engineers to give you a little bit of an update regarding the design and specifically focus on some questions about traffic implications.
My name is AJ Joshi. I'm traffic engineer with Pannoni Associates. Pannoni completed a traffic impact study. We studied specifically 6 intersections around the existing school, shown on the map here. If I can. Sorry, it's hard to make this work, but it's the 6 intersections surrounding the intersections. Okay, thank you. It's the 6 intersections surrounding the school. We completed traffic counts during AM and PM peak hours early in April this year. And we completed a traffic study based on PennDOT traffic study guidelines. We studied the existing conditions and conditions based on the expansion of the school. And based on our results of our traffic study, all intersections are projected to operate at acceptable level of service. Level of service is the term that traffic engineers typically use to define operations and capacity of intersections. Recommendations. So one of the recommendations we are proposing is a separate parent pickup and drop-off loop. The entrance to the loop will be entering through the side driveway 2 called out here at the intersection of Bond Avenue and Anderson Avenue. And the driveway will be one-way north, and the exit will be at the intersection of Marvin and Roberts. So it's going to be a separate just pick-up, drop-off loop for parents, which happens currently at the public roadway around the site. We are also proposing a new bus loop. The intent was to separate bus traffic from parent pickup drop-off traffic, and the bus entrance and exit is proposed along Vermont Road.
Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. My name is Michael Kelly. I'm the architect with KCBA Architects, and we've been working with the district for quite a while on the design of this project and the middle school as well. And I wanted to take you on a quick tour of the inside of the building as well as the outside. So this video here, we're going to start inside the building in the new gym. One of the great attributes of this project as a community asset is a large multi-purpose space for presentations, for youth sports, and for community gatherings. So you can kind of see here a large new gymnasium space. If anybody's been in the gymnasium space at Aronimink currently, it's much smaller in the basement, kind of a lower area, certainly not something that has a large ceiling height for basketball and things like that. So this is one of these attributes to this school that was certainly going to be a great advocate for physical education for the elementary school students during the day, but it's a community asset for everyone, nights and weekends. And as a parent of young kids, we went to a lot of different elementary schools, played a lot of youth sports at these types of facilities. So it's, again, a real attribute to the community. So here's a still shot here of the inside of that gym space. You can kind of see a stage area here. So for performances, for the big holiday show, this is a much nicer space than what's currently available there for the students and the community. So this is a bird's eye view of kind of the existing school here. Here's Burmont Road here, Marvine to the right. So what we're talking about with the addition is coming out in this direction here to the south. New playground space we created in the front, and you can start to see a little bit of the bus loop area that is being proposed here that we just talked about for the traffic study. So again, kind of a before and an after on that corner. We're essentially extending, and here you go, we'll do another one of these at street level, kind of a before and an after piece here. And you start to see, here's from the back, before and after. And this part here is the gymnasium space. This is the classroom space. I think this is our video. So what we're doing here, the existing school is gorgeous. Beautiful stone on the outside, beautiful kind of residential feel to the architecture of the school. So the addition that we're proposing is trying to be very much in concert with that. Look and feel very much in keeping with not only the school, but as a residential kind of neighborhood. So it's not an overly large, overly modern look to the building. And you can see this here as the site steps down. The front of the building is a 2-story building, and it steps down in its existing state to a 3-story building kind of in the rear of the building. So that's what we're building there. It kind of fits contextually. Let me go back one here. Right with the roof level here, running right across the existing facade, existing building here, and the new piece there. So we've been very careful with the materials as well as the forms that we're using. So as I mentioned, the kind of improved asset for the gymnasium space, you can see here our first go at a sample for the stone that would be provided. I think we're going to shrink up the mortar joints here a little bit to get an even better feel, but we've already have some masons and some stone companies coming out that we're looking at matching a very similar stone. And as I mentioned, staying with that kind of neighborhood character of the feel and of the building. So here's a site plan as of a week ago. So you can see how many things are changing as we go. This is not the current one. This space here shows the bus loop along Burmont Avenue, as we just discussed. And it shows a much larger public parking space here right off of Bond Street. Part of the new design is moving the front of the school. As Dr. McGarry had said, the DAO is getting kicked out, and the front of the school is right off of Bond Street. It's very important in school safety and security that the front of a school is well defined, very identifiable, and that we have visitor parking there. So if a visitor or a parent is coming to pick up a child, they're not in the back, they're not walking all over the place trying to find where the front door is. So we were proposing a much larger parking lot here off of Bond Street. After working with the municipality and starting to have some zoning meetings and some meetings with neighbors already, we looked at pulling back the parking to what's called here the front yard setback. So what the front yard setback is the distance from the road here to the front of the building. So we're saying, all right, we're not going to put any new parking in that front yard setback. We're going to keep all of that behind. So we shifted our bus loop over a little bit and created a parking area here, which still provides the required amount of parking that we would need. It also allows us to have a visitor parking, some handicap accessible parking as well towards the front of the school. That mixes very well with the bus loop here. It was very important to make sure that we were limiting or trying to reduce really the amount of buses that would be happening in the neighborhood behind. We wanted to keep all the buses on and off of Barmount. And that way we only have car traffic essentially around the rest of the property. We wanted to also try to provide an area where we could start to pull parents off of the streets. We realize, and we've had meetings here, we realize how parking spaces are not easy to come by. That'll certainly help when we stop visiting here, when the district administration moves someplace else. You'll have a lot less business visitors coming and going. But you are going to have parents in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. So what we wanted to do is create a new parent drop-off loop from the existing curb cuts here. So this is that visitor traffic parking spaces that are existing here that would come off of Bond, come through the property at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day. So only before and after school, and allow for parents to come through, pick up children, and leave. So we've got the intent is trying to pull as much traffic off of the street onto the school property. The bus loop only off of Vermont here. We are adding some parking again, visitor parking and faculty parking right at the front door. So again, we're trying to do the best that we can on the existing property that we have to reduce some of the traffic concerns. It was working and now it's not. During construction, so what is this going to look like? Well, we always say during construction, our first and foremost priority is safety. The best way to keep a very safe construction site is, again, identifying where exactly that is. So we have this red line here. This is the addition that we're proposing here, the bus loop and the parking lot again. So that red line here is really the construction area. What's very important is to show where that area is and where it isn't. Where it isn't is everywhere where a child or a parent is going to be while that construction project is occurring. So the students still have the ability to go outside and play. We still have the ability to provide, parking would stay on the streets, but people are coming in from to the building here. So we're being a very clear area where construction would be for the addition and the parking areas and where it wouldn't be. Come on. Staging areas, that's also very important as well. When all the materials and things come out to the site for a construction project, we want to make sure that we're very clear where that is as well. So it makes sense to have that basically right next to the addition and right over here right next to the parking area. So that's where we would have contractor parking. So the contractors who are coming here are not going to park on the street. They can park on the site, and some of that construction staging can happen right where the additions are located. We wanted to provide some before and after views as best that we can in virtual reality. This is a photograph. You can see a lot of the cars parked along the street here, and the existing school sitting here. Currently, there's a green field here, and the church is kind of off to the side there. And looking at this, I don't know if that guy's around to reduce the lights. Can you dim the lights a little bit just so they can see that a little bit clearer? So again, a before and kind of an after. What we're showing here is added green space ahead of that parking area. Thank you. So you can start to see the drive in here, as well as what would be the drive in here to that parking lot. But again, kind of pulling back from that green space here to maintaining a green space out along Bond. We talked about keeping parking back in that front yard setback. So that's really the goal of shielding that and creating a bit of a shed so you don't see the cars from the road and from the neighborhood, and providing as much green space as we can. We're adding parking to the front, but we're going to be very sensitive to the green space area, not only in front of the school, but in front of that parking area as well. So again, some site features and things that we're doing as we are increasing the size of the school. We're creating additional parking spaces. We're doing our best to get buses off the street, as well as provide some better ways for parents to come on and off the roads when they're picking and dropping off the kids, which not only reduces the amount of car traffic on the roads, but creates a much more safe environment for that action, for the students to come to a vehicle from the school. As I mentioned, no parking in front of that setback here. The building additions are within that front yard setback as well, so even the addition that's basically coming off at the same angle that this building is now sits right here, so we're not, again, building out in this area, or any space out in there. We're trying to maintain as much of that green space as possible. That's number 3. We're trying to maintain as much space as possible. There's some beautiful trees on the site, especially the one right in the middle of the building here. So again, we're trying to maintain that by maintaining all of these, maintaining these open fields here. So we're really doing our best to be very sensitive of where the building addition lies. As Dr. McGarry had said, there's been quite a lot of meetings. We've met with the Home and School Association. We did have an environmental advisory committee that we met with from the township, from the Gardens Aronimink Civil Association meeting. We're meeting here tonight. We also have what's called the Act 34 meeting. That's the kind of one required meeting we're supposed to have, but we're having 4 before that, and I'm sure we'll have more after that. So we're trying to get, as we've said many times, as much information out so that people can understand what the project is, what it's not, and make sure that we're providing as much information for you guys as possible. The steps taken, as we said, we've had a site survey. We've known that the land development process has started, so there are plans that are in with Upper Darby as well as the county. We've investigated many different types of building systems, had a number of different design meetings with teachers. We've had quite a few meetings with them to bring them in to talk about what's best for the art room, what's best for the music program. As we talk about these new 21st century programs, what is best for this space? What are you kind of struggling with now that with a little bit more elbow room, you could provide that much more broad of a curriculum to the students? So we've been engaged with a lot of public, with a lot of meetings with Upper Darby, and a lot of educational meetings with the administration and teachers as well.
So, as we talked about capacity earlier, and a couple of the questions that keep coming up, and I'll try to hit some of them as they come through. The kindergarten center. When it's all said and done, the hope is an option potentially for two things. Central office could move back into the district and then take over the kindergarten center as a central office space. Or there have been considerations or conversations about should we start some kind of a pre-K program in the kindergarten center. There are considerations. And our cyber academy is expanding, and there's a place where especially elementary school students need to stop in and get some extra help or some resources. So there's three considerations of how the kindergarten center would be used moving forward. It would be nice if it could become central office space, where a central office could be located there in the kindergarten center. So for the time being, that is our first priority. We would think to come back to the district in the kindergarten center as its space. So important to talk about the size and why, we've heard in meeting with township officials and some from the public about 700. And I won't go into more detail than this. PDE puts out what they call some kind of a specifications requirements of a number of students per classroom and how do you go about what you call education specifications. How do you use that space? We have a meeting with teachers. We have a meeting with, I see Mr. Riak, the principal of Aronimink, Ms. Simpson, who is at Sanko Elementary School, the principal, and Ms. Williams, who's at the kindergarten center. We've met with teachers. We've met with administrators about how we can make the best use of this space. What it really comes down to, as Mr. Salerno pointed out, the number of students that will be when half-day kindergarten is in place is somewhere between 569 and 590 students when it's all said and done at the Aronimink Elementary School. 700 is the capacity because when you break down the number of classrooms that you need, based on that first slide early on that I showed you with the class size enrollments, you require a certain number of classrooms. Between 13 to 17 classrooms will be needed at Aronimink. Another question that's come up through the presentation is, are you building these schools out to capacity? Great question. We know that we have other places where you could put additions on in the future. We don't want to do all those additions at one time, but they are there in the future if we need to, if expansion is a concern. For the last 25 years or so, if you look at district enrollment trends, we have a unique community where we're very transient from June when school lets out all the way through October. An example at Upper Darby High School, they have 300 new students that are at the high school this year that were never Upper Darby School District students the year before, but the number at the high school will pretty much level out to be what it's ended last June. So we get new students coming in, and there's also students that are replacing those students. We have a somewhat transient population. So from about kindergarten through third grade, 25% of the kids are different. The best example I can give you is if we take a group of first graders and take them all the way through 8th grade, there'll be 900 kids by the time we're in the 8th grade. 40% of them will be brand new. They were not with the first grade group. That's how transient certain areas in the community are in the school district. But the number is pretty much flat as far as how many kids will be in the school district when it's there. It's the certain areas where we have a higher enrollment and fewer classrooms. That's why we need the number of classrooms we need at Aronimink. Could we put addition onto Hillcrest? Yes. We could put classrooms at half at Hillcrest and increase Hillcrest. Educationally, I know that question came up. How many of you school district administrators live in the community? Not a lot of us at this point in time do live in the community. I do not live in the community at this point in time. However, I do know that Hillcrest Elementary School doesn't want to have that community with the traffic that it has close to 1,000 students on that campus. If we increase that campus and cut the classrooms in half, you'll have about 1,000 students at Hillcrest Elementary School when they're already at 700 students. So we're trying to eliminate the need to have that happen there. You saw the number 62 on one of the earlier slides. The new school that we'll show you in 69th Street will allow us to get to about 40 classrooms. So the reason why the elementary school on 69th Street alone doesn't work is we'll still be short 19 to 20 classroom spaces that we need to level the class sizes throughout the district to make it work. We're still going to be short 19 to 20 classrooms. That's why Aronimink Elementary School or Garrett Elementary School or Hillcrest, meaning really when it's all said and done, if we don't expand Aronimink, as you see here, Aronimink would get 8 classrooms, Garrett would get 5 classrooms, Hillcrest would get cut in half to their classroom space. We're trying to reduce that impact on having to do that at those 2 schools and ease the enrollment across the board at all those schools. When it's all said and done, Aronimink becomes a school that's about 90,000 square feet. As many of you know, and in full disclosure, we did look at the Prendy building as an option for the school district. From what I understand in reading it through the newspaper, that I guess the Archdiocese did a process for some kind of an RFP for folks to take over that building. We did look into that as a school district option. It would have been a consideration if we could have purchased it to ease the overcrowding and the enrollment in the school district. Fortunately and unfortunately, it didn't work out for us. Fortunately, on one hand, it worked out because that's becoming a Delaware County Community College, which is going to benefit Upper Darby High School through dual enrollment. So we'll have, at one point in time, I was telling a parent who talked to me earlier this evening, at Upper Darby High School, we last year changed our graduation program. We have what we call multiple pathways to graduation, and there's now 21 credits to graduate from high school. You can also become dually enrolled. You could be considered an Upper Darby High School student and take college classes at Delaware County Community College at a discounted rate. Some students have completed their freshman and almost their sophomore year being an Upper Darby High School student attending Delaware County Community College on that campus, whether it was at the Barclay Square campus, the Marple campus, or now on the Prendy location, the Bonner Prendy location. We will have students taking that either early graduation path, which will be the 21 credits, which currently now is well over the 21 credits to graduate from our high school. We're now at the state. You could stay beyond that, but 21 credits to graduate, or you can be dually enrolled and go to Delaware County Community College and be at that campus and not on our campus to be a student, which we do feel will decrease the number of students on campus here at the high school moving forward. Here's the process. I see questions about the timeline, what would happen here if this is approved. We still have to go to a zoning hearing. We will be going to the zoning hearing for a variance on the height of the building. We believe that the plan that we showed tonight allows us to have the front yard taken care of as far as the parking lot and the addition onto the campus, meeting the zoning requirements there. Of course, we'll have to go in front of the zoning hearing for that. We'd be asking for a variance for the height of the building, and that will now be taking place hopefully in October. With that all said and done, we'll go to an Act 34 hearing in the fall, and then beginning to look forward sometime in January to go out to bid for the project. Central administration will move out, and we would begin to try to renovate the internal part of where central administration would be first to free up some of those classroom spaces there in the building. We already talked about these points, but again, increased student and vehicle safety, drop-offs and pickups on the site. Right now, there's a tremendous amount of cars that are parked around the campus. We will be pulling them on from staff parking, administrator parking, and then on the weekends, the church would be able to use that parking lot next to the church for parking. It would pull the parking that happens around there. I know there's times, having run around the community that along Vermont and Bond, there's actually been times when folks are parked up on the curb around the school. You'd be able to use that parking lot around the facility to pull it off the street completely when school's not in session. When students are not in session, the current macadam that's there where students play becomes parking, and the parking lot where the staff currently will be utilized, and the visitor parking will be used for after-school activities. We're also preserving the green space that came through. We could have presented a plan that would have been part of a zoning that would have allowed, to put a parking lot here or put a parking lot here. And everybody should know that the zoning requirement is 3 spaces per classroom. So the reason why the parking lot is required is because it's required to have 3 parking spaces per classroom per the Upper Darby zoning code. And that's why we're having to meet those requirements as we put this in the school district. We did not want to put a parking lot there. We did not want to put a parking lot here, and we certainly didn't want to put one here. We're trying to preserve as much as the open space that we know currently is used for after-school and before-school activities. We do feel, I know somebody said in one of the comments that were made, it really wasn't a question, we feel like you're not improving Aronimink, you're simply building a community center. Well, quite frankly, many of our schools that exist in the school district right now are used by the community regularly, routinely. Part of the problem that exists right now is that some of the schools are so overwhelmed, Highland Park, Westbrook Park, that you can't get space, you can't get gym time, you can't get a facility to use for athletics. And Aronimink is a site where you really can't do much there at all as far as middle school and high school activities. We do feel that for all the taxpayers in the community, that space that's there would be a benefit for folks who want to use that for extracurricular activities or athletic programs in the community. They could use that space for basketball and other programs that could go on in the school district. 69th Street. We wanted to show that we do have a plan for 69th Street. We do have a plan for an elementary school on 69th Street. We don't own the property. It's part of the problem. So everybody also keeps asking us, I don't get it, why don't you build a school on 69th Street? Well, it's hard to build a plan around something you don't own. We don't own the property yet. We own a property in Cardington, which is on 2 acres, which is too small. The mayor has already come out in previous, and I agree with him, in previous conversations 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, that Cardington wouldn't be a good site for a school, considering we'd be putting a school in a very congested area. We're considering, again, not approved, but we appreciate, I see Don Burnett here and Tom McCosey. We've had conversations about working toward a land swap. Currently, we lease part of Marshall Road. It's one of those old leases for 100 years for $1 that really you can't break like other leases that you could break. We're going to try to keep that relationship going with the use of Marshall Road and then swap Cardington Field, if it happens, for 69th Street. And this is currently 69th Street. Put a school here, improve these fields, and allow these fields to be used as well by the community and keep that relationship that's there to improve some of the athletics that will be going on. And this is, again, an example of what would be happening down in 69th Street. We'd be putting a school, capacity of 750, and you saw earlier how many kids we think we could fit in that school while we get the right kind of spaces in place, and improving the athletic fields there, because coaching in this community right now, it's very difficult to find a space to hold practice. In fact, I would argue it's almost impossible at times to find open field space to have practice. This would be a space here that we could improve this area, and we could improve it for activities and after-school activities and programming that takes place. This is just an example of a school that we have presented publicly for the future 69th Street School. Again, this is all relying on the idea that we would get that property from the township in a land swap. Currently, right now, we do not have that in front of us to be able to do that. We'll go through some more questions. What we can't cover tonight when we cover the questions that were sent to us through this program, and I appreciate you doing that and your patience being here tonight, we'll post them tonight. If you have any other questions that you have after we post this presentation, or you go to the links that are out there since 2015, I would ask you to look at the elementary school study as an example. There are 32 different scenarios as far as the kindergarten center being used as a school. Why wasn't that considered to be used by a school? All the different scenarios were reviewed. Marshall Road was used. Different options about the types of schools and the spaces in the school district, and there are 32 scenarios for you to look at. The middle school, we reviewed 40 different options to solve our middle school problem. That's public, and it walks you through everything that we considered, from special education considerations, English learner considerations. All of that's out there for public. It's been going on for a couple of years, and you can review that information publicly. We ask that you continue to send these questions. Also, if you can, we have tabs that we're creating now. We have a 69th Street tab. We'll begin to populate the 69th Street tab, because our next process is to start to go down and hold meetings in the Watkins area and talk to communities around there about a middle school in the 69th Street area in the future and what that would look like. So again, you can go and see this tab. We'll continue to populate on our district website under Aronimink this information, this presentation, and we'll link this information for review publicly. I guess we can pull up some of those questions. Yeah, so I think a person at the last board meeting really presented this well, and I think it's unfortunate. Hopefully, as a community, we can get back to doing this to alleviate the other pressure, which is every mom driving their kid to school or dad driving their kid to school. Because today, currently, if you look at Aronimink, even with the new catchment areas, there are kids getting buses that back at that point in time walk to school. Really, Aronimink should be predominantly a walking school. I don't know if you're aware of this right now, but Aronimink has students that are bused there. Probably more than 50% of the kids get a bus within walking distance to that school, which, by the way, to Mr. Slander's point, to the person who wrote that in the saldo, Aronimink at that point in time, when it was 600 students, it was also a sixth grade at the building, I think, at that time. It was a kindergarten through sixth grade building. It did have over 600 kids, but those kids walked to school. So to answer the question about the bus loop not being there, from what we understand, more students, and a person brought this up in the past, more kids walk to school at that time. Right now, fewer and fewer kids are actually walking to school on their own. They're getting dropped off by their parents. We are aware of the fiscal reality that we're facing as a school district. We would be dishonest if we didn't tell you that we're keeping an eye on the fact that we can't bite this off at one time, right? So we don't want Sanko stranded at the kindergarten center. But we don't want Sanko, which predominantly is English language learners who go to school there, who we want to engage their parents, whose parents right now, if they do get engaged, are having to take a taxi or public transportation 6 miles outside of their community to be engaged in their students' education. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We do feel at least getting to the kindergarten center allows a much more straight line of public transportation to be engaged at the kindergarten center than going all the way out to Glen Olden to try to have a parent meeting. We have to bus families to Sanko for back-to-school nights because it's so far outside of their community. After-school activities, programs, clubs, they really can't happen at Sanko currently because they're so far outside of their community, which is a concern. They're coming from 5 different neighborhoods. As far as how long it will take, in full disclosure, as long as we're continuing to fight over the Clifton Heights Middle School property and taxpayers are paying the legal battle for Clifton Heights Middle School, it's going to be a longer period of time before we can do the boundaries for the elementary schools. It will take a little bit of time. We did have a timeline to have that happen prior to 12 years, but right now, because we're having that conversation about battling over Clifton Heights, that might be a 2-year conversation until that's resolved. If that's the case, then we'll work on the other facilities improvements that we have. 69th Street alone, just a school on 69th Street, I just want to reiterate, doesn't solve the problem. It will not hold enough students. We still will have to either do additions and renovations to other buildings once Sanko and Charles Kelly close. We don't want Sanko to be there for 12 years, but honestly, respectfully, we could have put Sanko in the school with Aronimink, but then we would be so far outside of their neighborhood. Why would we do that? We're respectfully putting the kindergarten center as Sanko to keep ourselves with an eye on a prize of getting students back to their neighborhood, redistricted, so we do have a neighborhood school in that area, so that those parents and those kids can be engaged in their school closer to home. We don't know what the exact final timeline is going to be. It comes down to how much we can afford and how much we can come together to figure that piece of it out. There are some stumbling blocks right now. The middle school piece and whether or not Aronimink becomes 34 classrooms or only 8, because that's a lot more money that has to be borrowed to make all those other renovations and additions happen. So there is a presentation off the top of my head, I think in February of 2019, we presented at Beverly Hills Middle School, and that's a public presentation. Part of Phase 2 that was presented that night were improved athletic facilities at Drexel Hill Middle School and Beverly Hills Middle School. If we slow down the actual new schools, we're still going to improve those facilities. We still want to make sure that Drexel Hill Middle School, I'm sorry? Is there a problem? Okay. Drexel Hill Middle School will be a situation where we'll be looking to improve the football field and the track, as well as the gym area and the locker rooms. Same thing at Beverly Hills Middle School. We're looking to make improvements at that property as well. That will also come into play with the $5 million year that we're borrowing already to make improvements in facilities as we go. So we are going to make improvements to Drexel Hill Middle School and the Beverly Hills Middle School as we move forward with this process. And that presentation has been made publicly. There's a whole capital projects list of high priority items and items that we don't have to get to within the next 2 or 3 years, all the way out to priority items that we have to get to in 10 years. And we're going to update that list quarterly and move those through so each year through our budget, we're making a public presentation on what's being improved and what has to come up each year. That's all public information. I also think it's important that if you could take us up on the opportunity to go to the school district website and click on the facilities study and go through all the way back to 2015 and look at the work that's been discussed and what's been shared publicly, that might add some more backdrop to what's going on with each of these presentations as we've had them. But we will post this FAQ. We'll post this FAQ for Aronimink under the Aronimink tab, and we'll keep the Clifton Heights information under the Clifton Heights tab, and then we'll begin to create an FAQ for the 69th Street location. We appreciate your time. I appreciate that. And we'll stick around for some folks who want to have conversations with us individually, and we'll post this information after tonight's meeting. Thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. Thank you.